thought you were a scam. So it's good to see you're real.
Self-confessed Thai Yorkshire bloke.
And I was partnered up as a teammate with guys like Jenson Button.
Never been on a track day before, and so I didn't know what to expect.
Wanted to do it for years, and I never bothered because you know when you first start growing it and it's just like you look like a teenager.
Welcome to The Launch, a podcast by founders for founders, following the journey, learning experiences and the opportunities that are presented. So whether that's people that have just set up their own business, whether it's people that have exited, or whether it's people that have done interesting things along the way. Thanks very much for joining us. Today we've got James Merrills from Race Competitions. Thanks for joining me.
No, good to be here. Thanks for having us, James.
So, we're here to cover your journey so far, about the opportunities and challenges that you've had with starting the business, growing the business, and what you've done in the past, as well as any advice for other aspiring founders or people that could glean some of the successes that you've had. So I suppose firstly, it'd be great to learn more about your background. I always like to start with a bit about how you first thought about becoming the founder of your own business, and what was the moment that you first kind of had thought about owning and running your own business, and where did that come from? What inspired you?
Well, I suppose for me, the main motivation, so I'm a racing driver. I've been a driver coach for many years. I've basically been racing cars since I was an egg, pretty much. So anyone kind of out there who's into motorsport will know that it is an insanely expensive sport. It's probably the most expensive sport in the world. I come from Barnsley, which is a coal mining town, had no connections to motorsports, didn't necessarily come from a privileged background. So where I come from, it's bougie just to go to university. So motorsport was completely off the cards. But, I fell in love with go-karting when I was a kid, found I was quite good at it, got addicted to it, got the bug. I always just wanted to be a racing driver. That's all I ever cared about. Kind of growing up through my teens and my late teens, never really had the budget to get into racing proper. Yeah. So I decided to go to university. I studied financial trading and investment management, literally just because I thought if I get that job, I can afford to go racing. If no one's going to back me, I'll back myself. And while I was at uni, I kind of just started a business out of curiosity. And I reverted to type, and I just did what I know. So in my first year at uni, me and a good friend of mine, Harlan Hatter, we co-founded a business called Forward Talent. That was like a driver management agency. So by the time I'd got to uni, I'd kind of worked out how the nuts and bolts of the motorsport industry worked. What should things cost for a driver? How do you get involved with the team? How do you talk to sponsors? Motorsport is very insular, so if you're not in that in-group, it's a tough nut to crack. And I also knew a lot of guys who were in the position that I'd been in a few years ago. Before that, when I was kind of 18, 19, trying to get into motorsport, no money. So I would charge them a retainer fee. Had about 6 drivers that would pay me a retainer fee every month to basically advise them on anything that didn't involve driving. Yeah. So that was my first business, and the motivation to get into it was I never really, to be honest, sat down and thought, right, I want a business. Not at that age, especially.
You just wanted to race.
I just wanted to be in motorsport. I wanted to be around it. I love the smell of it. I love the way it sounds. And there was no way I wasn't going to be a part of that. I'll be honest, I got a little bit bored at uni, and I thought, I want something to do. I want a project. I want something that's a bit bigger than me. So we started that business. It was very, very small. It went for 2 or 3 years, and then we just closed it down because to be honest, we weren't enjoying it. But it was my first kind of taste of having a company, sourcing clients, managing clients. It gave me that first feeling that you can actually just have an idea and then push it out into the world, and it can work. Yeah. Even if it was just in a small way. So my motivation originally was just, racing's expensive, I need to go and make some money, so I'm going to take my knowledge of motorsport and start a company that way. But since then, I've had a few businesses since then, and it's totally transformed. I love business now as much as I love racing. I'm fascinated by it. So it's sort of circumstantial how I got into it, really.
Yeah, okay, cool. So how did things evolve from there?
Well, there's a few stepping stones to get to where I am now. My next business after that was also at uni. I started another couple of companies at uni. One of them was I basically took out a loan, bought a race car, started hiring it out. I started my own team called Merrills Motorsport. I was hiring out a Mazda MX-5 to other drivers. And to be honest, I wasn't really doing it for profit. What I would do is I would find, it's called endurance racing in motorsport. Basically, you've got two drivers that share one car. You swap the car over between drivers halfway through the race. And I would find another driver to pay for the racing. And I would basically go racing for free. He would get to go racing in my car. I would handle all the logistics and stuff. So it was kind of a value exchange, really. And then the first kind of successful company that I had was called Shutter Speed. I started that at uni as well in my last year. We turned over, low six figures. It was a management company. We would take on subcontractors from, photographers and cameramen, driver coaches, salespeople, and we would supply those to driving experience companies, the kind of companies that you might go on Virgin or Voucher and you pay 60 quid to drive a Ferrari. We would supply them with their staff. Originally it started out, I knew a few photographers that wanted to get into motorsport photography, and I knew all these companies because I was working for them as an instructor. Were always looking for photographers but didn't necessarily have a neat and tidy way to find them. They were just kind of asking for referrals from staff or posting on Facebook or whatever, a bit like a Craigslist way of doing it. And I thought, well, I know these guys and I know these guys. I'll just middleman it. So that took off. The photographers were very good. They were excellent. And that's not a boast. I'm commending their work there. Many of them have gone on to international motorsport photography or full-time photography in UK companies. And as a result of them being so good at their job, the clients were asking for other stuff. If I was supplying one photographer for one event at a racetrack somewhere, suddenly I had clients saying, well, can you give me 5 people to sell the photos at the sales desk? And at first I was like, well, that's not really what I do. But then I did the maths in my head. I was like, hold on, I'm kind of multiplying my revenue there in a day. So I did it. They were very good. I just started out with my friends first on the job. And eventually we were turning over 6 figures while I was at uni. I didn't necessarily enjoy that business. It was something adjacent to a staffing company. And it was constantly like finding someone in this new part of the country who would be available for a weekend, and then finding another 19 of them, and then doing it again the next week. And then, you got people maybe not showing up or not performing. And it was just, I didn't like managing that side of the business. But that gave me a real insight into the track day industry, because I was working there as an instructor. I was supplying and managing all these staff. And so I got to learn a lot about the track day industry, which is how I got to where I am now, which is running racecompetitions.com, which is a high-end VIP level track day experience company. There's a space for this in the market. I'm not knocking it, but it was very kind of cheap and cheerful. Get 1,000 customers through the day, cheap prices, but kind of maybe not very high-end experiences, shall we say? And I thought, well, there's space for this on the other end of the market. Let's do something that's really customer focused. Let's not do 1,000 customers. Let's do 5. And let's not do it for 60 quid. Let's do it for 1,500 quid. And let's give them the maximum amount of track time in the best cars at the best circuits. And when they're not in the car, let's make that fantastic too. Let's give them a concierge. Let's include a professional photographer. Let's include world-class driver coaches. Let's just really, really elevate this experience. So what we do now is VIP track days for high net worth individuals, as well as we do a lot of B2B stuff as well. So we do corporate track days, normally for smaller numbers, kind of 30 and under, typically for corporate clients that have got their own blue chip clients. And they're effectively just trying to remind those blue chip clients that they exist. Or it might be an introducer, or they might be, just trying to get a proposition across the line, and they want an invitation that stands out. So that's kind of the journey I've been on. It's always been kind of motorsport businesses in one shape or form.
Very good. It sounds fantastic. Really interesting. Obviously, recently I had the pleasure of coming out with you on one of the track days as well. I'd never been on a track day before, and so I didn't know what to expect. I'd never done one of the Virgin or Voucher experiences, and I'd certainly not done a high-end one either. Obviously, I've been out with you, and I think getting to a race course and feeling the excitement, hearing the noise, like you say, the smell as well, obviously, petrol and just the sheer excitement of it all is really fantastic. And I think I'd probably not quite realised how exciting it was until I started to just pull up at the gates, and then
yeah, exactly. There's something about that when you first turn up to a racetrack that's a live racetrack with cars going around, and you pull up and you hear that noise. You know, sometimes it can be maybe a bit nerve-wracking, especially if it's your first time, or it can be exciting, but it just does something to you. That, you know, perhaps I've got nothing against golf. But when you roll up to the Belfry or something, for example, you just don't get, you know, you hear the birds
different
tweeting,
kind of excitement.
and that's nice. But when you roll up to, you know, Donington Park or Brands Hatch, and you hear those Porsches screaming by or whatever, and you, as you say, you get the smell. There's such an atmosphere to it.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. And so for anyone that is kind of similar to what I was, that has never been on a track day, just explain what you would normally get on like your Virgin or your Ultra experience as well. Like, what does that day typically look like?
So those third-party vendors, they don't necessarily do the track days themselves. They work with other companies that put the track day on. So there's a range of companies you can choose from, and they do a range of different experiences on there. But an example of one of them might be you pay maybe £69 to drive, let's say, a Lamborghini, and you would typically drive to an airfield somewhere, normally like a disused airbase. You will kind of get like 2 or 3 laps in the car. You get the bragging rights of having driven a Lamborghini, and it only costs you £69. And to be fair, for that sort of pricing, I think that's fair. I think that what they're delivering there works at that price point. But 4 or 5 minutes in the car, maybe there's a bit of congestion on the circuit, maybe there isn't. Maybe you'll be able to get above 4,000 RPM. Maybe you won't. You do get what you pay for, and for a lot of people, it's not about going fast on those days. It's about what you get to drive. So they might pile 3 of them into a package and say, drive a Ferrari, drive a Lamborghini, drive a McLaren. And customers love it. People, especially the junior drivers, you know, the kind of under 18s, absolutely love it. Love getting the photos. Love driving the Ferraris and stuff. And I still sometimes miss taking those kids out in the Ferrari and having them drive it, because it would just be the best thing they've ever done, and that was really rewarding for me. But in terms of pushing the cars or getting a lot of track time, it would be unrealistic to expect that at that price point, to be fair. So you don't get much track time. You don't necessarily get to push the cars that hard, but you get the badge, and you get to say that you've driven a Ferrari and a Lamborghini. And where we're different than that is you'll spend the whole day with us. You'll spend easily over an hour, maybe over 2 hours, driving on track in a proper race car. No speed limits, no rev limits. Pro coaching, yeah. We'll have world class.
Not that helps me much.
Well, you know, we have world class driver coaches there. We're not there to rein people in. We're there to give people confidence and make them faster, and to, you know, we just want to share the passion for race cars that we have. And to, I mean, personally speaking, when it comes to this sort of thing, I just kind of want to grab people in the street and say, you know, have you seen this? And I love sharing that passion with people on the track. So we're not about minimising what you get to do on the track, or the amount of time you spend in the car, or how fast you get to drive. I want our customers to come away absolutely thrilled, you know, full of adrenaline, a better driver. And I think if someone comes on one of our track days and they're not asking when's the next one, we've failed.
I found it really fascinating, and I think, obviously, having spoken to you in the past previously about it, your concept for what a good B2B day would look like, or what a good high-end day out for like a more exclusive group of clients, I think that sounds fantastic too. So if you won't mind just walking us through what those experiences typically look like, what are the benefits of those types of days, and what's the sort of format? How do you do it? So
in terms of the format, they're pretty bespoke those days. We do have some what I call the turnkey solutions for our B2B track days. For the turnkey stuff, that's for smaller budgets, smaller teams. It's more about the driving than any kind of business-focused objective. So for our turnkey solutions, they're all under £10,000. They're kind of for teams of 10 or less. And we will turn up to a public track day with one or more of our race cars and basically take you out on the track and let you drive and do some passenger laps and things like that on a public track day, which means that there'll be other members of the public with their own cars driving on the track.
Yeah.
But our core thing that we do in terms of B2B that's actually more popular is the 10,000 and above level, which is totally bespoke. It involves us hiring a private venue. That might be a private racetrack. It could be a private airfield. And typically the clients that we take on those bespoke B2B track days have their own clients that are worth an awful lot to them. They might have a few clients that they're entertaining that are worth, 6 figures or 7 figures a year to them. Or maybe we'll deal with a partnerships manager whose entire job is to remind their introducers that they exist. And whenever they get an introduction, it's very high value. So these guys have really, really valuable relationships that they need to nurture, and that's at the core of their business model. And what we will do is we basically offer an engagement solution for that. So we look like a track day company in this sense, but really we're a client or a partner engagement strategy that looks like a track day. The driving is a means to an end.
Yeah.
So the driving and the track days, it's an exciting invite. It stands out from a steak dinner. It's not golf. How many people are inviting these guys to drive a race car on a private airfield? You're probably the only one. So first of all, they're going to accept the invite. But then when we get there, it's not just about what happens in the car. We realise that these clients, they're not necessarily there because they like driving. They're there because they want to engage this person and it's valuable to their business. Yeah. So we like to say that we're the UK's most client-focused B2B track day. And what that means is that we're there to facilitate the off-track stuff as much as the driving itself. So I'll give you an example. I put together a quote recently for they're an international cybersecurity firm, and they supply the banking industry, basically. So their clients are big banks in London. And the guy I was dealing with, he's a partnerships manager, and his entire job is to remind these guys that he exists and that he helps them with their compliance and stuff. And they do a lot of golf events, and they're spending like £20,000 a day sometimes on golfing. What we've proposed that we'll put on for them is that we'll hire a private airfield. We'll fly in some of their top clients with a helicopter, land them at the circuit. We'll put on some bespoke track experiences. So we'll do the top speed challenge. We'll do Race Your Mates, which is like a driving game. We've tried to gamify driving a little bit. Yeah. So they'll spend the day doing some driving activities. Obviously, that's a talking point. It's an icebreaker. But then the big thing for them is that we've chosen a venue where there's a hotel, there's a bar, there's a restaurant, conference spaces, private suites. So in the evening they can retreat. We'll put on kind of a champagne and canapes evening for them so that they can do like a keynote thing and actually get some business done. When we do B2B track days, we're not just there to put people through a car and then they do what they want and send them home and we not bothered if they do any business. We're there to really help them engage the really specific high value stakeholder relationships that they've got.
Yeah. That sounds fantastic. And I can completely understand where the value is with that as well. Like, I would say it's fairly unique as well. I get a lot of golf invites specifically.
Do you play golf?
I have done, yeah. Not very well.
No, me neither.
Yeah. I do enjoy it. I haven't always had the time to practice it to get to a point where I then enjoy being out on the course as much as I would do if I was playing well.
Yeah. No, I've never been on the course. I've not done it yet. I used to live right round the corner from the Belfry. Yeah. And I used to go like twice a week to the driving range. And they'd normally just go sideways. Yeah. So I've not been on the green yet.
Yeah. It's good. I've played a couple of good courses, and I think on my better days I get round all right. But I'm the type of person that if I'm really going to do something, part of me enjoying it would be doing it to a decent standard. Yeah. And so to do something and to do it badly,
it's hard though.
Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah. It's massively. It's a difficult game, and it's a game that you can only really improve in small margins by doing it consistently. Yeah. I suppose there's loads of analogies you could use for that and similarities to business and whatever else, but. That's fantastic. So in terms of how you've leveled up as a entrepreneur, founder of multiple businesses, is there anyone particular that you follow, or is there any books that you've read that you would recommend? How have you supported your journey through learning and following other people?
I'm a really big fan of Rory Sutherland.
Mm.
I think he's like the vice chairman of Ogilvy, the marketing and advertising company.
Yeah.
And I just, what I say about him is I don't think I've ever heard him speak and he hasn't said something interesting and insightful. And I sort of subscribe to a lot of his ideas. He's quite contrarian in a lot of ways. Anybody who's heard of him will have heard of his, he's got this story where he talks about, I think it was Transport for London or maybe it was a Eurostar or something going across the channel. Anyway, it was a long train journey and they were getting a lot of dissatisfaction with wait times on the train, and the engineers were all saying, how can we make it faster? Maybe we can make it 5% faster. And his contribution was to say, well, you shouldn't make it faster, you should probably make it a bit slower and serve free champagne so that the quality of the waiting is elevated rather than having a rubbish wait and just making it a bit shorter. So I like that way of thinking where he sort of attacks problems he sort of steps back from problems and says, well, are we actually asking the right questions here? And one of the things our business has done that is directly inspired by Rory Sutherland is to put our prices up.
Yeah.
We had a launch event at the NEC in Birmingham, an event called Autosport International. It's basically Europe's biggest motorsport trade show. And we launched our price at £699 per person. It says on the side of the car, it says VIP track day experiences from £699 per person. And everyone that came and spoke to us says, is that a real price? What's the catch? What are the hidden costs?
Yeah.
One person even came to us and said, I thought I'd seen you guys online and I thought you were a scam, so it's good to see you're real. And we came away from that blown away. I was worried that at £700 a person, people would think it was too expensive. I don't know, maybe that's the Barnsley in me.
Maybe. I mean, there's obviously some people that are unaware of the level of quality difference of what you're doing, they might compare you to, like what were you saying, £69 for drive something a couple of times round an airfield. But I think when you really understand the level of difference, and it's not just about taking a photo with a car and driving it once to say that you've driven it to your mates and then not getting anything much more out of that over and above it. Something that's a little bit more maybe superficial. I don't know if that's a bit harsh on that experience or not. I've not done it, but I suppose that's the kind of impression that I'm getting of it. Compared to like the day with you where it's one-to-one driver coaching, it's a real experience, it's on a proper race course, it's driving a proper race car that's got all the kit and is optimised for that. It's not just a road car that's being driven on an off-road track or an airfield or something like that. I was surprised actually, even the Mini that I went out in, I was blown away by how fast it was. The level of performance that you get out of the vehicles is phenomenal. Do you want to talk a bit about some of the cars that you've driven or that you can get in as well? Because for anyone that is into motorsport, that's a big pull as well. Yeah,
I mean, in terms of the cars I've driven, I mean, I couldn't list them all. I worked out a little while ago, I must have driven, raced and tested over 250 race cars and supercars. Anything from a Peugeot to a Praga, basically like a Formula 3 car with a roof on it. Classic Peugeots, old Jaguar types, Ferraris, whatever. In terms of what we've got access to for our track days, so there's a few ways we do it. So we've got a proprietary fleet of our own race cars, which of course we've got the Mini that you've driven recently.
Yeah.
We've got access to a Radical SR3, which is like a Le Mans style prototype, purpose-built race car. Looks absolutely wicked. We're looking at getting some more cars potentially in the future to add to the fleet, but on top of that we've got a lot of partners where we can kind of call them up and say, listen, we're going to borrow your car, we'll hire it off you, we'll run it with our customer. So customers can request specific road cars and race cars with us and we're able to source them. And sometimes if a customer's got their own car, maybe it's they've got a nice BMW or a McLaren or something and they want us to put our VIP track experience around it and bring a driver coach and just handle all the logistics for them. They just want to turn up and have an experience wrapped around their track day in their car. We can do that as well. So we've got a few of our own race cars, but we're not limited to just that. We've made it flexible.
what we were saying earlier, obviously driving a McLaren or driving a Ferrari or whatever, some people might, especially if you are into motorsport, they might want to drive their own car and test that, but likewise they might want to drive something new and get a bit of a feel and a sense of what that's like. So,
well, that's why we've gone with race cars. And I was saying this on a call yesterday. He was saying, well, you know, my CEO, he's really interested in cars, but I know he's got a McLaren, he's got this. And I said to him, well, that's why we've gone with race cars. Yeah. Because at this price point, a lot of the clients that we're talking to probably have got a Porsche, or probably have got a Ferrari or a nice BM or something. So we've kind of stuck with race cars specifically, so that it's still something that those guys haven't experienced before, and it's something new for them. Yeah.
Again, like you say, the contrarian thinking of trying not to do what the masses are doing or what the low-cost, high-volume competition are doing, and trying to do something a bit more unique. I'm a massive fan of that way of thinking myself. Yeah. And I think to focus on quality and service is always the best way in business. Mm-hmm. And so what about the business journey that you've been on then? If we talk about how you've established the business, how you've funded it, how you've grown and developed it, do you just want to share a bit about that?
It's been a little bit of a rocket ship this year. So we launched in the first week of January. You know, it's the end of February now. Mm-hmm. And in that time, you know, we've had a launch at Europe's biggest motorsport show. We got our first clients that day. Yeah. We've formed a B2B partnership with a company called 50 Supercars, which is a supercar club down in Bath. So we've got B2B partners. Obviously, we've got like assets on the books now. We've got our own race cars. The website's fully launched now. We're ranking okay on Google and stuff like that. So it's gone really quickly, and it's kind of surprised me how well it's gone. Yeah. It's investment backed. Currently looking at closing another deal with another investor, and we've got a couple of other investors kind of knocking at the door as well. Yeah. So it's venture backed.
Yeah, cool.
We're taking a bootstrapping model to it. I don't want to just kind of throw money out the window and hope that that's a solution, because I don't think just because you're spending loads of money it's necessarily going to work. You need to be clever about how you spend it, and spend it on the right things. So it's a mix of bootstrapping and raising funds. Yeah. But it seems to be working quite well. What's been really interesting about this business in the first 2 months is it's got, unusually I think for an events business, a really, really short window for feedback. We get instant feedback from the people we speak to, just because we're speaking to so many different types of people all the time, and we can kind of gauge who is most interested in us. So when we first started, we thought we were just going to be selling track days to rich guys, but now it looks like our bread and butter is probably B2B track days. And we've got a specific type of employee at a specific type of company that we know is responding really well to us. Yeah. So it's that bootstrapping mentality, whilst being venture backed, has allowed us to pivot and be flexible on moving from a little bit from our original vision to kind of target what's working really well. Even if you're venture backed, having that bootstrap mentality is allows you to just know when to be flexible with things.
Yeah. You know, I'm contacted by businesses quite regularly for investment, and some big tech companies that are on an almost perpetual raise and chasing a 10-figure multiple exit, or sometimes more than that. You know, they're really interesting businesses, but I guess as another, I suppose, self-confessed tight Yorkshire bloke, I can get the value in trying to use it wisely, trying to grow through sales and through word of mouth. Obviously, you mentioned, you know, starting in January, but you had a bit of a test run last year as well, and it sounds like that was really good to feedback and a bit of experience.
Yeah, I mean that business. So I've run a track day company before that was venture backed, and we went under. That is why I'm running this the way that I'm running it. That's why I'm running it completely differently. I'm focusing on totally different things. Yeah. I think a mistake that first-time founders often make is that they focus on product rather than delivery, which is what second-time founders do. And we spent a year, basically. I think we spent about £90,000 on product development. Product development for us looks like hiring a racetrack, bringing along some friends, family, customers, basically people to trial different experiences and see what works. And I think we were just too focused on fiddling with the product.
Yeah.
And that meant that we never took it to market.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've run out of money.
Yeah.
And now you think you've got a product, but now you can't take it to market because you've spent the money on developing the product. Whereas now I'm doing it completely the opposite way around. I mean, obviously I've got the benefit of having spent a year developing track day products. Obviously that's a massive advantage.
Yeah.
Basically we came straight out the door with a developed product, which is a real bonus for us, I suppose. But what I'd rather do, and I think what is more a healthier way to start a company, is to just don't rush it, but come up with the best version of the product you want to sell, but then figure out how to sell it.
Yeah.
And that's it. You can have the best product in the world. If you've got rubbish marketing, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got an all right product that's got potential to be developed, but you've got excellent marketing, I mean, which business would you back? You'd back the second one, of course. Yeah. So what we do a lot of is we focus mostly on marketing and, develop the product as people experience it. And you need real customer feedback to be able to do that. You can't just try something and then in your mind think, well, maybe it'll be better if you do this, because you just don't know how the customer sees it until the customer has put their hands on it.
I guess you can have the best business in the world or the best idea in the world as well, and if no one really hears it and no one experiences it, then it's just so hard to get traction. And I think that's where a lot of businesses and a lot of people sometimes are unsuccessful, unfortunately. They focus, like you say, on more the operational aspects or the product idea, the quality of the idea. They spend that much of a time and focus on it that really then how it gets to market and what they're actually testing it out with customers, getting their feedback, delivering it to customers, whether that's through calls, emails, door knocks, however, ads, however they do it. It's hard to get like you say, genuine feedback on what people really want and value and appreciate when you're completely developing something solely from your own perspective as well.
And that's the thing. When you're doing that, it is from your perspective. And I think when you start a business, anyone who's watching this who's started their own business will know it's kind of like your little baby. It's like your child, and you see it one way. And of course, it's good to have that vision, but a really important thing as a founder I think you need to do is you need to know when to be flexible with that vision and when to kind of say, no, this is the way we're doing it. And a lot of founders kind of maybe make the mistake of going, well, no, this is the vision, trust me, I know this will work, without having done any testing. So you kind of need to know what is the vision, what are you starting out with, what are you trying to do, but you need to be ready to hear that outside perspective, normally from a customer who says, I think that's a bit pants. And then you just need to be able to take that and then change what you're doing. That's a really it sounds easy, but that's a hard skill to have, I think, as a founder, is to know when to block that out and when to be flexible with it.
I think what you've done really well is you've defined an ideal customer profile as well. A lot of businesses might not have gone to the lengths that you've gone to define their ideal customer profile. So they're going out to a fairly wide audience, and what you have for one type of customer might not appeal to them, and it might appeal to another type of customer. And so they can't be as specific about how they're marketing and how they're targeting people. And then as a result of that, they might be selling the right thing and they might be doing the right things, but in the wrong direction. Yeah. So I think it sounds like you've certainly got a good strategy and a good idea and direction to the business. I'm obviously not personally from a motorsport background or anything like that, but it's been something where the more I've learned about it, the more I've found the appeal that others find in it. Yeah. So really interesting. So what does the future look like for you then? Where do you go from here? What do you expect in the next sort of 12-18 months and couple of years?
Well, we're in the early growth phase at the minute, so over the next 12 months I want to focus on trying to find a long-term HQ for the business. I want to get some of our first full-time employees on board, effectively buying a bit of my time back so I can work on the business rather than in it. I think that's one of the, as soon as you're kind of past the traction phase as a startup, that should be your job as a founder, is to try and get it to a point where it's scalable. So that's our focus for the next 12 months. You know, we know that the product is in demand. We've got the traction. So for now, it is about just trying to maximize the sales so that we can kind of, rather than, as you say, constantly fundraising, which becomes your job as a founder if you're constantly fundraising like that. All you do is fundraise and you never run the business. So it's about trying to find a way for the business to be customer funded in that early growth phase, get ourselves a HQ, expand the fleet, get some staff on board, and then beyond that, got ideas in the back of my head about other countries that I want to work in where I think the market is ripe for this sort of thing, and I think we'd do very well. So maybe expanding into the Middle East and Europe and possibly, America in the long term.
That'd be great,
Yeah.
I suppose one of the other things that you've mentioned to us previously as well is the day in the life of a racing driver, which I found super interesting. So do you want to just talk us through that in terms of like the format of that kind of day as well?
Yeah, so one of the products that we want to start offering is, as you say, it's not named yet, but I suppose you could name it a day in the life of a racing driver. So with some of the more high-end cars that we're looking to add to the fleet, what that day will look like is maybe you and 2 or 3 other friends will come along, and you know the whole garage will be decked out like a Formula One garage. It will have the light gantry, the walling, the floors, you know, the TV screens in the background with all the data on it. Get a data logger in the car, onboard footage, world-class driver coaches, and effectively treat it in the same way that a professional racing driver would treat a very high-level Friday test day. So if you're into motorsport, you'll know that a race weekend is typically testing on a Friday, which is like practice, qualify on a Saturday, which is basically just set a fast lap time, and then the race is always on a Sunday. We'll run it like a Friday practice, and it's all about it's experiential. It's all about giving that sensation of what it would be like to be a professional racing driver at a high level for a day. So it's designed not just to give you a cool time on track, but to make you feel very special off the track and actually really work on proper driver development. So rather than, you know, in most driving experiences, you'll get a few tips and it'll be about like, okay, this is the racing line, you should brake here. And normally as an instructor, you will kind of have them brake a little bit earlier than you would because you're braking on the limit. This is not that. This is about getting you to absolutely go to the limit, actually develop that driver just the same as you would a professional racing driver. Bring them back into the garage. You know, they have their own concierge, have their own personal photographer for the day. Take them over to the data station, watch the onboards with the engineer, with the driver coach, change car setups so you can adjust things on race cars like the suspension softness and stiffness, and you know how the car sits on the road, and you know tire pressures and really kind of nerdy things like that. You can adjust them all. And we'll do little experiments with people to help them understand how they can contribute to setting up our car for them, to their driving style. So we might send them out, you know, we'll soften all the suspension springs off all the way soft, send them out, do a few laps, bring them back in, tighten them right up, put them the stiffest they'll go, send them out again and say, right, that's the difference. And help them understand how to develop a platform, how to develop a car, whilst doing all the driver coaching and working with the data. So it's really for the enthusiast who wants that experience of what it would be like to be a professional racing driver kind of on the world stage at the highest level, and to develop you know real track skills, very, very in depth. It's for the real enthusiast.
Because you've worked with professional drivers and people who are wanting to develop themselves as drivers, whether that's kind of a hobbyist or a semi-professional or professional. I guess you've worked with all sorts, right?
I have. I've worked with all sorts. Over lockdown, I by accident ended up being a semi-pro esports driver. I got into a basically an online championship that ended up on Amazon TV because sim racing basically took off. Sim racing is basically like you've got a wheel and a computer in your bedroom. But the software underneath it is like high level proper simulation stuff. And I was partnered up as a teammate with guys like Jenson Button, some Formula 3 drivers, a guy, a NASCAR driver, a bunch of others like touring car drivers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I've kind of teamed up with some great guys in the sim and in the real world as well.
Yeah.
But I've obviously been a driver coach to proper racing drivers as well. Some of them have gone on to do great things. I mean, it's I can't remember the date, but I think it's either today or tomorrow, a driver called Jonathan Ogden that I've coached before. He's got an award-winning documentary coming out about his story. Yeah. It's either today or tomorrow, and it's been great. I've been involved with him since he was in karting, and he's now, he's raced internationally.
Yeah.
Really, really great guy. He races for a great cause as well. So yeah, I've been fortunate to kind of bump into the right people at the right time, or team up with some really big names in motorsport. But the most rewarding stuff is working with drivers right at the beginning of their career and seeing them kind of achieve stuff, and then when you kind of step away from it, seeing how they take that and then develop it on their own and take it international. That's really rewarding.
Fantastic. No, it sounds like you're really passionate about what you do, and obviously there is the driver coaching side of what you do. There's obviously the driving experience as well. You mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago about different race competitions that you can kind of enter yourself, or maybe thinking about how you might, with one of your investors or with maybe a client or whatever, enter some competitions and do a bit of a story or something like that as well. So that sounds really exciting too. Do you want to share a bit of thoughts around kind of what the direction of that would be and where that came from?
Effectively, one of the things I want to do is to take someone who's basically never even been to a racetrack and turn them into a racing driver and film it. And I want to invite influencers to get involved. I want to film some of it for ourselves, for race competitions. I want to invite some TV companies to get involved, just because I think it's a really great story. I've got the background in the racing. I want to take someone who's maybe not even interested in racing and try and help them
have a go.
fall in. Well, you're more than welcome to give it a crack. I honestly, I think you should.
This is where it starts.
This is where it started. No, but just to take someone who's not necessarily even trying to be a racing driver and just try and it's not just about showing the journey and showing how hard it actually is, but that it's achievable and you can go out and do it. But also I think that would be to get someone who's not necessarily a petrol head and have them maybe fall in love with it a little bit and see that it's a nice human story, and it will help a wider audience maybe fall in love with motorsport a little bit. And me, I just want to share that. I just want to share the sport with everyone.
People do love stories as well, and me personally, I think there's a lot of informative content that goes out on social media as well. Because there's so much of it, I feel like there will be a resurgence of storytelling and of story-focused content as well. Yeah. So I think that kind of thing sounds super interesting. Very good. And I must say as well, I'm loving the handlebar moustache as well.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I'm trying it on. I think it's okay so far. I'm getting used to it. I just always wanted to grow one. Like, my dad had one. My uncle, who's like a cattle rancher out in Canada, he's got a big one this, and he's got the big hat. And he's got a massive yellow school bus as well, bizarrely. And I just thought, like, I quite want one, but I was always...
As a racing driver, I guess it's like being a footballer, right? You can just have whatever hairstyle, what you want. You can have a mohawk, or you can go for the... what's the one that's popular in rugby league?
Like a mullet?
Yeah, like a mullet, party at the front, business at the back.
I don't think I'll pull off a mullet.
Around even.
But, I never did. I wanted to do it for years, and I never bothered, because, when you first start growing it, and it's just like, you look like a teenager for about a week. I was just like... I need a week where I'm not going to leave the house. And anyway, I didn't have that, but I just thought, whatever, let's go like that.
It's Movember that's carried on till February.
I'm doing Jovember.
Exactly.
I'm Fovember now.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for coming on. Anyway, I really appreciate it. Big fan of everything that you're doing, and what I'll do is I'll drop an email address onto the screen for anyone who wants to find out more information about the business. If anyone's interested in one of the client experiences or finding out about how they can support James and his venture, So we'll drop that, and thank you again.
My pleasure.
Great stuff.
Cheers.